snowing here in Boston, and it's cold, but here at The Sweat, we are dedicated to bringing you award-winning and hard-hitting journalism, analysis, news, also that you can build your best fantasy lineup. I'm Jessie Coffield, he's Brendan Glasheen, and we're your hosts for the night.
Yeah,
slip
of
of the tongue.
Our dedication to the game is matched only by these guys. Say hello to our NBA panel for this evening. DK Live duo, Julian Edlow, appears Dietrich, plus RotoWire's Nick Whalen. Hello.
All right, guys, Chaser Fade is where we begin. Kyrie Irving will be out tonight after hurting his knee in the Celtics' downright embarrassing loss to the Clippers on Saturday. So, Julian, with Irving out, please chase or fade that Terry Rozier is a must-play tonight against the Sixers at 6-9.
Yeah, so maybe earlier in the season I would be chasing this, but we were getting Rozier. We got him one game that Kyrie Irving sat out at $3,500 and he jumped into the starting lineup. Rozier is $6,900 on this slate, so he's almost twice as much. So I'm going to fade this. I think there are other Celtics that are going to be better plays. Jaylen Brown has been a really good play when Kyrie Irving is off the floor. Gordon Hayward at just $4,700. And then my favorite of the group is Marcus Morris at $5,000. I think he benefits the most with Kyrie Irving off the floor. He's averaging 36 DraftKings points in 2 games against the Sixers this year, and he's from Philly. He loves playing at home. So Marcus Morris would be my Celtic that I would go after with Kyrie off the floor.
Pierce, Julian, not sold on Rozier. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I'm exactly with Julian. He was cheaper in a lot of those times, and he also had some pretty soft matchups as well. And you just look, we've seen a huge sample size of when Kyrie's not on the floor, and we see where the usage goes. And I mean, it's the Celtics. It's what the Celtics have been for 5 or 6 years. It's just everybody steps up a little bit. No one person takes over. If there's one guy that does get a pretty decent boost, I would say, and Julian touched on, is Marcus Morris. He becomes more of a distributor. He becomes more active in assists and in rebounds. I could go with him. And then Jaylen Brown seems to always get garbage time, where just when he's on the court, he's the main guy of focus. So I could go with Brown as well, but Rozier's just too expensive.
Nick, how do you feel about him?
I feel the same way. Like Julian said, I think early in the year it seemed like such an obvious plug and play with Terry Rozier, but it's not a situation where with Kyrie Irving out, all those minutes go right to Terry Rozier. I mean, there's been times where he started for Kyrie and he'll only end up playing 29 or 30 minutes, which in that situation and for the price you're paying tonight, just isn't enough for me. So we've seen Terry Rozier have these games where he can get you 40, 45 fantasy points. But in games recently where Kyrie sat out, he's just been a little bit too restricted for me. So, it's not an indefensible play by any means to get Rozier in your lineup, but I think I like some of the higher priced options at point guard tonight.
All right, on to LeBron James. He is probable for tonight's game against the Hawks. He's also the most expensive player available on this 5-game slate, $10,500. Pierce, chase or fade if he plays. He has a LeBron night.
First of all, the probable tag, you're just going to have to get used to that. I feel like we're going to be dealing with that for the rest of the season. You're going to know whether he's healthy or not healthy. He's more than likely going to play. They need to win basketball games. You can get 35 minutes out of him in a close game. They play at a breakneck pace. Shouldn't blow out. This is a lock. 2 really bad defenses. He is the play of the night. When you look at the 4 games since he's been back, 72 fantasy points against Boston, 57 against the Clippers. He had 2 duds, but those were blowouts. They're not going to get blown out by the Hawks.
Nick, do you feel similar to Pierce?
I do. I think this could be a LeBron night. Obviously Atlanta is not a very good team, but they've looked a little bit better of late. And this is a game I think where in the past, we'd maybe see LeBron take it easy. Atlanta is a team that he's beat up on going back to his Miami days. But like Pierce said, the Lakers don't really have that luxury anymore. I think LeBron knows that. You think of the All-Star game as kind of being halfway through the season, but when you look at how it's distributed with the schedule, that's not really the case. And the Lakers kind of have to have a sense of urgency. So I think LeBron is going to take matters into his own hands tonight. You look at Atlanta as always a team that's maybe at risk to be blown out, but I don't even know if the Lakers, at least this iteration of the Lakers, are capable of doing that. They've given up 143, 128, 136, 120, and 127 over their last 5 games. So I think this should be a high-scoring game, should be a fast-paced game, and I'm looking for LeBron to have another big night, possibly maybe even throw up another triple-double. He's had at least 9 assists in every game back, and he's averaging more than 10 rebounds per game since coming back from that groin injury.
Julian, are you in agreement? Chase or fade LeBron having a LeBron night?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say just to be a little bit different in tournaments, I feel like the Golden State-Utah game isn't getting enough attention. It still has a decently high projected total. Utah has actually covered the last 5 games, covered the point spread the last 5 games against Golden State. So they generally keep it close, which gives those Golden State studs a little bit more upside. And there could be more to go around if Draymond Green doesn't play, and he's questionable. But to answer the question, yeah, I'm chasing it. If you read my NBA cheat sheet on the playbook, LeBron's my superstar to pay up for. Reed Fowler off camera, rolling his eyes, but he reads that article every day. LeBron's in too good of a spot. We've got like 237, 238 projected points here. It should, the way the Lakers are playing, stay relatively close. And this is the type of game that LeBron can put together just a monster triple-double against inferior competition.
Guys, Anthony Davis has not been able to put up his usual numbers since the trade rumors started, so that recent lack of production and high price of 10-3, it could cause his ownership percentage, though, to drop tonight. So, Nick, chase or fade that Davis is still worth playing tonight against the Magic?
This is so tough. I mean, I know he and the team and Davis's management team continue to say the right things, but the situation does still make me nervous. But with that said, those concerns are a little bit more salient in season-long leagues than they are in DFS. And Davis does get a decent matchup tonight against Orlando. I mean, the thing to keep in mind is if you believe he's going to play, even if his minutes are monitored, he can still be incredibly productive. Had 52 DraftKings points on 8 shots in 34 minutes in their last game, had 51 DraftKings points in 25 minutes the game before. So you're not really losing out on that elite floor. But what you are losing out to me is maybe that elite ceiling. You know, gone are those nights where Davis might play 44 minutes and put up 85 fantasy points. I don't know that the Pelicans are going to let him kind of play that deep into games anymore. You know, if there's any semblance of maybe a minor injury, I think they're going to be cautious. So, you know, this is already a guy who is pretty fragile, and now, you know, you're kind of going night to night with the Pelicans, maybe looking for reasons to hold him out of games, even if they can't hold him out outright.
Julian, what do you think? You think his minutes are going to be pretty limited? They're scared he might get hurt. Do you still want to play him against the Magic?
Yes, you have interest in him in tournaments just because DraftKings is finally saying, okay, we understand there's a minutes restriction here and we're going to lower his price. $10,300 is down, you know, $900 since he played against Minnesota and down $1,400 since he left the lineup with that injury. So there is some appeal here. And like Nick said, like the 52 DraftKings points on 8 field goal attempts has to be like some sort of record. So Anthony Davis can still produce without being, you know, thrusted into this role. But where I also agree with Nick is just that the ceiling is gone. The 70, 80 DK point games, it's going to be really hard to get those in limited minutes. So I think Davis has some appeal, but I would much rather go with LeBron, just considering that Davis doesn't have the same ceiling that he once had.
Pierce, what do you think? Is he still worth playing despite all of these other things?
He's worth it from an ownership perspective. I mean, as we've all mentioned, LeBron is the play tonight. So if you want to fade the heavy LeBron ownership, which I don't think that's a good play, Anthony Davis is not going to go. He's going to be pretty low owned for all the reasons that we've always known. And, you know, he's got the injury questions, but now he's got the whole new questions of, does he even want to play? And I know he said that he wants to play basketball when he loves playing basketball. If you watch the interview after he got benched from the fourth quarter, he comes out and he says, well, I love playing basketball. But the look on his face didn't look like he loved playing basketball or that he liked his team. Now, I know it's hard to read the emotions of a guy with a unibrow, but it didn't look like he was very happy. He does not like the team. The team doesn't like him. He got benched in the fourth quarter in a close game. We have no idea what's going on. It's too risky. The minutes just, you can't, they're not guaranteed. And at that price, you need to know the minutes are going to be there.
I mean, just really, really quickly to build off of that, like, we're talking about we want to play Anthony Davis maybe because of lower ownership to pivot off of LeBron. But if Anthony Davis doesn't still have that same ceiling, that means that we need LeBron to have a bad game for Anthony Davis to have one of these 50-point games to be worth it to pivot off LeBron. So that makes it even more risky because that ceiling isn't there. We need LeBron to play poorly and Davis to score, 50, 52 again.
Studying the emotion of a unibrow. That should be a science of its own.
Yeah, it should be.
So if Davis does not play tonight, Nikola Vucevic will be an attractive player at 9,500 against the Pelicans. Julian, back to you. Chase or fade, Vucevic will have the most fantasy points of all centers tonight.
I mean, the most fantasy points of all centers, number one, do we count Davis as a center because he's power forward center eligible?
Yeah, fair.
But I'll take the field here between Davis, if we want to count him there, between Embiid and the run that he's been on against the Celtics. He's scored over 60 DK points in 4 of his last 5 games. The Celtics are kind of unraveling a little bit. So I'll take the field against Vucevic. And center is also a position I think has some really good value on this slate. JaVale McGee has been awesome for the Lakers. And those 2 other centers for the Lakers are questionable. The Hawks don't have any big guys to defend them. So Boogie against Utah, I would either go value or go up for a guy like Embiid at center.
Pierce, do you like the field or Vucevic?
I like Vooch, but I love Joel Embiid tonight. He's just basically putting up 60 points every night. So if you're going to give me 60 points, I'm going to take 60 points. And he's done it against Boston. Here, if you look at the last game, he got the matchup against Daniel Tice on 15 possessions. He scored 16 of Boston's 17 points during those possessions. So once Tice comes in, you might as well just give the ball to Embiid and give him automatic points.
Nick, how about yourself?
I'm going to fade this as well. I mean, you have a couple other elites in Davis and Embiid. Like they said, Rudy Gobert, even LaMarcus Aldridge, can do damage against this depleted Grizzlies team. I like Vooch, but I'm going to go with the odds and take the field tonight.
All right, good stuff, guys. Take a break and study up for over-under. Brendan and I are talking golf next.
Tyler Sullivan here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Demaryius Thomas's brief tenure with the Texans has come to a close. According to reports, Houston is expected to release the wide receiver. Thomas landed with the Texans leading up to the trade deadline last season, ending his long tenure with the Denver Broncos. The 31-year-old played just 7 games with Houston before blowing out his Achilles in Week 16, an injury he's still currently recovering from. Considering that injury and the $14 million that Thomas was due next season, it does seem to be a logical move for the Texans. And even before the injury, Thomas's numbers were down for what we've grown accustomed to. In 15 games played between the Broncos and Texans, he caught 59 passes for 677 yards and 5 touchdowns. Still solid numbers, but not as dominant as we've seen in the past. Thomas says he is not thinking about retirement, so now he'll be looking for a new team to take a chance on him as he tries to make his comeback.
Okay, it's time for us to bring on DK Live's Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich to talk about the upcoming Genesis Open.
But first, a quick NFL headline update. Antonio Brown has tweeted, "Thank you to Steeler Nation," and officially requested a trade, according to Adam Schefter. So, Reed, if the team decides to trade him, how much do you think he's worth right now, and which team should reach out and get a deal done?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be worth a king's ransom, right? I think when you look at Antonio Brown and what he can do to a team, and if you look at the free agency wide receiver market, or what you could potentially get in the free agency market, I know he's not one, but it's really barren. I mean, if you think about it, Golden Tate kind of jumps off the page as the best one out there right now, but it's going to cost you a first-round pick, and he's really expensive, and Steelers aren't going to just give him away for nothing, and teams that really could go after him, right, are 49ers in terms of what they're able to do, the cap space that they have. I think they're 7th in total cap space. The Raiders, right? I mean, if you look at that receiving core, pretty bad since Amari Cooper had left. And even when he was there, that just was a place in shambles. But sort of a dark horse for me is Miami, the Dolphins. I mean, I can just see Antonio Brown in Miami. He already lives down there. Cap space in terms of what they're able to do isn't that much, but if you can get a rookie quarterback, and if they're in that rebuilding stage, a guy like Antonio Brown, even with all the drama, which might not connect with Brian Flores a little bit as a new coach, could do you some wonders there. But he's going to be worth quite a bit.
Jeff, how much is a king's ransom, and where could you see AB?
Yeah, I disagree. He's pretty strongly with Reed here. I don't think he's going to fetch anywhere near a first-round pick. I think a third or maybe even a fourth-round pick is what you're looking at. I get he's one of the greatest wide receivers in football. That's not up for debate. It's just his value. He's really expensive and he's older. I mean, Amari Cooper went for a first-round draft pick, but that's because Amari Cooper is really, really young, and he's still cheaper than Antonio Brown, and you're paying for that upside. The upside is already there with Antonio Brown, and it's going to cost you. So I would be shocked if he fetched a first-round draft pick. I guess it could still happen. I think it'll be closer to a third. There's really not that many teams out there, too. San Francisco definitely would be the leader in the clubhouse for me. It makes a lot of sense. Outside of them, I think you're looking at a veteran team stepping up and trying to take that next step. So maybe a team like the Packers comes out of nowhere. They've really had trouble getting that secondary option outside of Devontae Adams. Maybe a team like the Rams comes out of nowhere. Maybe they They trade off Brandon Cooks again, something like that. I just don't know why a team like Miami or a team like Arizona, so obviously rebuilding, would put so much money into a guy like Antonio Brown. I just don't think it helps him that enough. So San Francisco, they need that wide receiver for Jimmy Garoppolo, or a veteran team close to winning, maybe Green Bay, maybe even Kansas City.
Wow, that's a lot to work with there. All right, well, we'll see what happens with AB and how quick they turn around his request. All right, let's talk about golf, please. How about some PGA price check for the Genesis Open to kick this thing off? Justin Thomas is the second most expensive player this week, right behind Dustin Johnson. Thomas will run you $11,000. Jeff, do you think he'll be worth that much bread?
Yeah, give me all the Justin Thomas this week. I really like paying up for this guy. I mean, look, first enters the tournament first in strokes gained tee to green, first in strokes gained approach. His game has looked almost flawless to this point in the season. He hasn't won, which is the only reason he's not the most expensive player in this field. He's also got improving course history at Riviera. T9 his last time out. He's played here 4 years in a row, and he genuinely likes the course. Played here in his college career as well. There's nothing here to put me off Justin Thomas. I like the fact he's not coming in from flying overseas like DJ. I like him. I mean, I mentioned Tony Finau maybe as a possible winner, but if there's one top player I could see coming in here just blowing the doors off this thing, it's Justin Thomas.
Hey, Reed, $11K, the right price for Justin Thomas?
Yeah, whenever you can get JT at not the highest priced guy, I mean, he's worth that much week in and week out. We see what his talent is, what it has been over the long form. And to Jeff's point, right, I mean, strokes gained approach over the long form of the last 50 to 100 rounds up until current. I mean, he's number one or number two in that category. And slice it any way you want, approach is obviously one of the most important statistics out there. I mean, you got to get it close into the greens. What scares me a little bit about JT, obviously, if you're looking at the top 5 guys in this range, his putting has been a little suspect. But again, I mean, you're splitting hairs here with one of the best players in the world. And really, honestly, I don't think DJ belongs at the top with how he's currently playing. Obviously, he's the best talent that we've seen. But right now, where it's coming from, I think in terms of the top 5, DJ is probably, third or fourth on that list in terms of how he's playing compared to the other guys. So yeah, JT at this lower price, I agree with him.
All right, Bryson DeChambeau will also cost you a pretty penny, but based on his recent performances, he could be worth it. So Reed, do you like his price of 10-2?
I mean, he's correctly priced from how he's playing, but I don't like it at all. I think we talked about this yesterday in terms of how he does in the West Coast. Doesn't do that well, right? The Farmers, Genesis, and all of these tournaments on the West Coast, he doesn't really perform that well, especially if you look at Genesis and the guys that have won, the DJs, the Bubba Watsons, right? Even the shorter hitters that have won here, it doesn't really fit Bryson's game. And you have to be a little bit more creative. Obviously, you have to be a shot maker here, and Bryson has all of the requisite shots to do well at a tournament. Obviously, he's winning, but just his form on the West Coast, I don't really like it. So again, if you take him head-to-head with the other 4 guys that are priced up here, the only guy that I potentially take him over is DJ because of that price differential. But other than that, I don't like his price.
Jeff, you were nodding there. Do you agree with Reed on this one?
Yeah, I think I pretty much do. I mean, look, it's not that the price is wrong on Bryson. He deserves to be priced above 10K. I mean, he's a top 5 player in the world right now. He's won more tournaments on the PGA and just worldwide than pretty much anyone in golf over the past 6 months. I mean, 2 playoff wins, a win in the fall series, a win over in the Middle East to start the European tour. This guy has got it done. He's well deserving of the price. The problem is, it's like Reed said, he hasn't played on the West Coast this year. He doesn't have a great West Coast record, and he's only played Riviera once, and it came with a T40. So it's asking a lot for him, I think, to just come over and just dominate this field and pay off a 10-2 salary. I'm really looking at him as more of a top 20, top 25 player this week, not necessarily someone I want to pay up for and rely on for a win. So
on to Adam Scott. He did not perform well last week at Pebble Beach. $8,700 this week. Jeff, do you think he deserves and will live up to that price?
It's funny because I want to like Adam Scott this week. It's just that $8,700. I was hoping it'd be $8,200. I think he is deserving of this price. I think it's actually a pretty sharp price because Adam Scott has a lot of good course history at Riviera. He's played the West Coast, so he's coming in with good form. Obviously a solo second place at the Farmers. He played at Pebble last week. Now, he didn't play that well, but it's not that big a deal. It's a Pro-Am. The point is he's got this West Coast form going, and that's what you want to see coming into Riviera. And you add in the fact that he's got multiple top 10s. He actually won here in 2005, way back when. So, Adam Scott to me has everything you want. I just like getting a little bit cheaper price on him because his putter sometimes can just turn into a stick of dynamite and cause him to miss cuts. But at the same time, he's a fine play this week. I think he actually will live up to that price.
Reed, how about yourself? How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, all the things that Jeff was saying about Adam Scott is true. And again, what you don't like is the last 5 tournaments straight, he's lost strokes around the green. These are some of the smallest greens on tour. And with this Kikuyu, and you're going to hear that quite a bit, the type of grass that is around in the rough here, it really grabs that ball. So if you're short game, if your approach is just a little off and you're missing these short greens, which these guys definitely are able to do, his short game doesn't really give you a lot of confidence. But again, his West Coast history here is his recent form where we saw him with a top finish recently, garners that price tag, and he's actually a decent pivot, right? If you want to pivot off of these high-profile name guys like Tommy Fleetwood, Paul Casey, a little bit cheaper than him, I think he's a solid pivot play. So the price is right, a little too high for me, but I think the price is right with his current form and his course history here. So yeah, I like the price, good pivot, but I'll have low ownership on Adam Scott because that putter scares you.
Excellent work as always, gentlemen. We're going to have you back for PGA pin placement after we preview tonight's action on the ice.
Time for a DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Tyler Sullivan. Bruins winger David Pastrnak will miss at least the next 2 weeks after undergoing a procedure on his thumb. The 22-year-old suffered the injury off the ice, and in a statement from the Bruins, they revealed that Pastrnak and several teammates attended a dinner on Sunday night, and while walking to his transportation, he fell and injured his left thumb. This is a huge blow for Boston as Pastrnak leads the team with 31 goals and 66 points. He's also been a force on the power play, second only to Tampa Bay's Nikita Kucherov in points on the man advantage. With the trade deadline approaching, GM John Sweeney said that the injury will not change their approach, but Boston was already in desperate need of secondary scoring, and losing their top point getter for any period of time certainly doesn't help the situation. The Bruins currently rank third in a tight Atlantic Division race, so all points are crucial at this time of the year.
It's cold outside, and it's about to get cold in here because we're putting the show on ice to talk good old-fashioned hockey with Chris Wassel of Awesemo.com.
So splurge or save, Chris. You know the drill. You love this game. So you choose between a high-priced player or a cheaper counterpart with maybe a tempting matchup. So Patrice Bergeron, he's the most expensive center tonight at 7-7 against the Blackhawks. But if that's too much cashish, you can jump down to Braden Point, who's 6'6", against the Flames. So, Chris, do you want to spend up for Bergeron or save with Point?
I'm going to save some dollars tonight. Look, Patrice Bergeron is missing a big part of the Boston offense, and David Pastrnak. Look, kids, don't drink and walk around parties at 11:30 at night. Apparently, that's dangerous these days. So, all kidding aside, Braden Point's probably underpriced at this point. So are most Tampa players. I noticed it over the week, stumbled on it over the weekend when Nikita Kucherov suddenly dropped to 6,700 and I hit the shiny red button really fast.
Hey,
it's just too easy.
Too easy.
Chris, he just fell. Okay, we don't know if he was
fell.
actually drinking or not.
We can.
Oops, I kind of do.
Oh, inside info right here. I love that.
What do I know? Okay, hey, let's go to Patrick Kane. He is the top wing tonight, 7,800 facing those Bruins. But if saving cash is the goal, you could take Jonathan Marchessault, who is 6,100 and is going against Darcy Kemper of the Coyotes. Are you splurging or saving here, Chris?
In this case, I'll splurge. For better or for worse, I will ride Patrick Kane. I will ride him in every chance I get. As much as I like Marchessault's matchup tonight, Arizona is quietly a very stingy team when it comes to defense. They may give up their goals, but they also do not tend to give up a lot of shots. About 28 to 29 a game, which in this day's NHL is not a lot, guys.
Okay, I knew you were going to go with Patrick Kane. He's your boy. So, Roman Josi is 6'5" against the Red Wings tonight, making him the most expensive defenseman. Now, if that's too rich for your blood, Chris, you could take Jared Spurgeon, who's only 5'3", and he's facing Anthony Stolarz of the Flyers. So, do you want to splurge or save a defenseman? You did just splurge on Pat Kane.
It's true. I got to save a little bit of money, and I will save a little here. with Jared Spurgeon. I like it. I like his floor, his shots and block shots in particular. And he has a pretty solid matchup against the Philly team that, look, they're on the back end of a back-to-back. Didn't look, they put up a ton of shots last night against the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't know how much gas they'll have left in the tank. One tip for people, if you don't want to spend on Yossi, but you still want to get a little bit of Nashville exposure, take a look at maybe Ryan Ellis or Matthias Ekholm.
All right, let's go to Pekka Rinne, most expensive goalie at $8,300 against the Red Wings. You could do that, or you could save and take Roberto Luongo, who's $7,600, facing the horrible Dallas offense. Are you splurging or saving at goalie?
Pains me a little bit to say this, but I will actually save here with Roberto Luongo. I know his numbers are not so good, but when you're going up against a team that has 9 goals in their last 6 games, you have to kind of roll the dice a little bit here. Now, for cash lineups, it's obviously Pekka Rinne because he has the best chance to win. But for any tournament, if I have a chance to save money, I'm going to take Luongo.
All right, finally, Chris, please hit us with your slate-approved pick, a.k.a. your lock for tonight's 12-game slate.
God, I hope I'm right on this because I'm gonna take a bath in New Jersey if I'm wrong. Because I'm going against New Jersey here. I'm counting on Vladimir Tarasenko, who has resurrected himself from the proverbial gulag, suddenly out of nowhere to start producing like Vladimir Tarasenko, the one we're used to.
Well, hope you don't have to end up taking a bath in New Jersey for your sake. All right, Chris, thanks a lot for your help. Our NBA panel joins us in a couple of minutes after we get an update from the Tour Junkies.
What else is there with Cam Champ? You got to tell me another reason besides just the fact that he can bomb it off the tee. He hasn't been in that great a form since, I believe what was it, before the Sony Open maybe, at the Tournament of Champions, and he really hasn't done all that much. I know he was the darling last year in the fall, but I need a better reason other than, hit the ball far, man,
Well, I'll give you a few. I mean, first of all, there's just upside with Cam Champ.
It's a good price at $7,600.
It's a great price at $7,600. That's what I really like about it. You got the upside in the young guy in Cam Champ. You've got a guy who's proven to win on the PGA Tour, proven that he can compete on the PGA Tour at a high level, even in deep fields like this one. But beyond just the bombing, if you look at the last 24 rounds, he is top 30 in this field in opportunities gained, and he's number 20 in this field in greens and regulation over the last 24 rounds. So, I mean, the rough isn't all that penal here at Riviera. It's more about being in the fairway, having the right angle, being able to control your spin into these small greens. But to me, even though I know Cam's recent results have been a little sketchy, but he's coming off the AT&T Pro-Am with a 28th place finish. The ownership is kind of like you said with Kuchar, it's dropping down. He's been between 8 to 10% owned in the last few events. But I mean, just look at the Pro-Am. He gained 2.5 strokes off the tee, 2 strokes with his iron play, 2.5 strokes putting. He didn't shift the ball that great, but he normally doesn't. But he pounds greens and he hits it a long way. So I just think the upside is too good for Cam Champ. $7,600 for that kid, that scoring potential on a course like Riviera that does reward distance as much or maybe more than the average course on the PGA Tour. At 7,600 GPPs where he's 10% or less owned, I think you play him. I think it's a no-brainer.
All right, good stuff from the Junkies who tour back breaking down tonight's 5-game slate in the NBA. DK Live's Julian Edlow and Pierce Dietrich, plus RotoWire's Nick Whalen. We know you missed them. Good to see them back here.
Of course. So now it's time to play over-under.
Sure.
Over-under? Yeah, okay. The odds makers love the Lakers and Hawks to combine for a ton of points. 237 of them to be exact, the highest total of the night. So, Julian, will this one go over or under 237?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the guts to take the under here, so I guess that leaves me with the over. I mean, we talked about this in the opening segment about how much we like LeBron, about how much we like so many plays from this game and the pace that this game could be played at. look, the Lakers just allowed whatever it was, I think 143 points to the 76ers, and they've been scoring a lot of points themselves. I think you got to lean over this game, even though it's a huge number.
Pierce, over or under 237?
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy line, but as Julian mentioned, I think in the Lakers' last game they hit 260. And I think that game didn't go into overtime, and it wasn't even close at any point. So the defenses are horrible. Both these teams are pretty much bad at every metric you can throw out there. It's got to go over.
What about you, Nick? Where are you going? We got 2 for over.
Oh, let's make it 3. And as we said in the previous segment, Lakers defense has been terrible lately. They're 28th in defensive rating over their last 8 games. They're a top 5 team in pace on the season. As we know, the Hawks are the fastest team in the league. They're 3rd last in defensive rating on the season. They've been even worse over the last 10 games. So I think the Lakers get the win, but I don't think it's going to be a massive blowout. I think the Hawks can hang around and the points are going to be flowing. Something like 129, 110 seems absolutely reasonable in this game.
All right, juicy matchup in the Eastern Conference. The Sixers host the Kyrie Irving-less Celtics. Think this one goes over or under 224.5 points. Pierce.
Yeah, I think it's going to go over. And if you look at when Kyrie Irving misses, there really isn't a secret here. They go about half the time over and under when he's not on the court. So you're not going to get anything really revealing from the Boston side. But you got to look at this Sixers team, and they are absolutely loaded. They're basically Golden State East. I think we should call them the Keystone State. And they've got, the parallels between these two teams is pretty ridiculous. Now, they don't have superstars, but J.J. Redick to Klay Thompson, what's really the difference there? You've got Toby. You've got, it's ridiculous. The same Jimmy Butler, they're all pretty much matched up. They may not have the same potential scores, but the defense is there. These guys are going to continue to score a bunch of points. We saw them put up 140 the other game. Go with the over.
All right, Nick. Well, clearly, Pierce is all about that Sixers squad. What do you think? You in the over as well?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I'm going to go over. We don't really have a great sample to pull from, even though these are two teams that I feel like play more often than they should. They met on opening night, which was 55 games ago. And then they met on Christmas Day, which, those games always tend to be kind of unique anyway. That one was an overtime game. So we really don't know where this is going to go before you even factor in the fact that Kyrie Irving isn't playing. But I will go with the over. I'm a little bit worried about Boston maybe holding up their end of the bargain without Kyrie. But I do agree with Pierce that this Philly team has been re-energized by adding Tobias Harris. They're obviously very top-heavy, but that first unit is almost impossible to stop. We saw that on display against the Lakers the other day. I think they're going to play a ton of minutes together, that starting 5 tonight. Philly just put up 143. They had 117 against Denver on Friday. And the Sixers have allowed at least 110 points in 5 of their last 7. So they look great offensively, but they slipped a little bit on the defensive end. So even without Kyrie, I think Tatum, Brown, and company are able to push this one over.
It's a good point. This is also the first meeting in Philadelphia this year between the Celtics and Sixers. Julian, are you taking the over as well?
Well, to answer Pierce's initial question, the difference between Klay Thompson and J.J. Redick is 5 All-Star appearances. I just looked that up.
At least you admitted
so that's
that.
something. But I'll fight the guys here a little bit. We need something different. I'll go with the under. Kyrie isn't playing. I think that you can make the argument that does mean something because he's been carrying them a lot lately. This Celtics team has been having some issues. And Terry Rozier has been one of those problems within their locker room. So maybe this is a game that they take a step back. We saw a game earlier this season in Boston, Celtics 105, 76ers 87. I don't think that will be the case in this game. That game was back in October. And Philly should be favored in this game, but I do think it is a game that has the potential to go under, especially, with a relatively highish total.
Well, guys, we already discussed how we're not really sure what the Pelicans are going to do with Anthony Davis. So that makes the Magic Pelicans a tricky one to figure out. So over or under 225 points, Nick?
I have to go under here. Magic have been really good defensively these last few weeks, which kind of came out of nowhere. But the Pelicans obviously have some major question marks. Davis is going to play. They announced their starting 5. They actually have him in there with Jahlil Okafor, which is something we haven't really seen. They only got to 90 points, though, against Memphis the other night, and that was with Davis playing 34 minutes. Both these teams are bottom 10 in offensive rating over the last 10 games. Both are bottom 10 in true shooting in that span. I think this could be an ugly game that ends up going under.
Julian, what do you think?
I actually like the over in this one. It's right around that same number as Celtics Sixers, but as Nick just said, he thinks this is going to be played at Orlando's pace. I feel like it could be played at New Orleans' pace, which is much more rapid. These are the tough games right here, where we have this number. It's kind of an in-between number, and you have two teams with such different paces. So there's a little bit more room for a different opinion to take either side. But the way that New Orleans has been playing lately, that game the other night against Minnesota, even that's a much more fast-paced team than Orlando. I just think New Orleans isn't playing any defense right now, and I think the Magic will take advantage of that.
Pretty fair right there. So what do we think about this one? Who's left? Pierce.
Over. You know what's not fair? Mentioning a Memphis game, you got to throw out the Memphis games. You can't use those to consider going with the under. Those games always go under. Super slow games. We'll probably talk about that here in a second. I'm going to go with the over. The Magic have been scoring a lot of points. They do play defense, but they've been scoring points lately. The Pelicans, as Julian mentioned, 6th fastest team in basketball, 25th in defensive efficiency. The Magic are going to keep scoring, and the Pelicans are just going to let them score.
All right, Jazz Warriors projects a point total of 226.5. And if you're wondering, we're going to do a showdown discussion about that one later. How about the over-under? Easy over here, Julian, considering the Warriors are involved?
I don't think anything with Utah is necessarily an easy over. They've played twice this season, both games in Utah. One went way under with 211. One went way over with 247. So this number's kind of near the middle, but yeah, I think the way things have been going, I would lean with the over here. This one's in Golden State. They play a lot different in Oracle Arena. They've actually kind of been playing not that well lately, which is why maybe one of these other guys is going to take the under. But I think they're due to break out of this slump. Utah's a team that always plays them tough, so they'll have to kind of find their way if they're going to get this game.
226.5, over or under, Nick?
I think I will go with that over. It's definitely not an easy one. I know the Warriors have lost one of their last, I don't even know, close to 20 games at this point. Jazz are a top 3 defense on the season, but they've sunk back closer to the middle of the pack. I think they're 14th over their last 10 games. So that makes me feel a little bit better about that over. Utah did beat Golden State back in December, like Julian said. They held the Warriors to 103 points in that game. But that was before Boogie Cousins, who's really added another dimension to this Warriors offense. I think Utah's able to keep this one close in the first half, maybe through the third quarter. They do always play Golden State well, but with it being at Golden State, with Boogie Cousins being in the mix, I think the Warriors are just going to end up being too much.
And Pierce.
It's dangerous, but I'm going to go with the under. And no one wants to go with the under against Golden State. But we automatically assume that Golden State's a great offensive team, but they're a really good defensive team. If you look at the last 15 games for both of these guys, they're in the top 5 in terms of defense, Utah and Golden State. And if you look at their overall record combined, they're 26-4. You don't go 26-4 by just playing offense. You play great defense. This is a playoff preview. These teams are going to come out and play real defense. We see a lot of regular season games where no one really cares. Tonight, we're going to get to see one of those rare games during the regular season where guys are actually matching up and trying to prevent scoring. This one's going under.
All right, excellent work, fellas. This trio is back later on to break down the Jazz Warriors showdown contest. You did mention that. Golf is next, though, on the Sweat.
Want to see the finals like never before? Of course you do. Well, DraftKings has partnered with Netflix's newest film, Triple Frontier, to bring you an exclusive All-Star Game showdown contest with one of our most exciting prizes ever. But this is not your ordinary showdown, people. This is a league showdown where you will need some help from your brotherhood, just like the film's Brotherhood, starring Ben Affleck, Oscar Isaac, Charlie Hunnam, Garrett Hedlund, and Pedro Pascal. Now, you're going to start by creating a 5-person league on DraftKings and recruit your most trustworthy accomplices to take on the challenge with you. DraftKings will drop the free-to-play NBA All-Star Showdown contest into all active leagues. Your Brotherhood's mission is to have the best combined score across all leagues in the All-Star Game Showdown. And if your crew manages to complete this task, the payoff will be mighty. The winning league will be rewarded with a VIP, all-expenses-paid trip to the finals in June for all members of their Brotherhood, courtesy of the Netflix film Triple Frontier. So, do you have what it takes to seize the jackpot? Choose your crew and your lineups wisely, and you just may be headed to the finals. And don't forget, catch Triple Frontier starring Ben Affleck, Oscar Isaac, Charlie Hunnam, Garrett Hedlund, and Pedro Pascal. Available on Netflix March 13th.
Back on the sweat, where we head to the greens, the Genesis Open begins Thursday morning, Valentine's Day, so we bring back our Valentines. Golf guys Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich to help us project the finishes of some players participating. Oh my God, Valentine's, what's up?
Yeah, hey, I don't know if Jeff's
You ready, Jeff?
I don't know if Jeff's got the heart to be a Valentine.
Yeah, he does.
No?
Oh, look at that face. He's everyone's Valentine's.
Valentine's is the most made-up holiday ever.
Hey,
Reed
I hope your wife doesn't watch this show.
Okay. It's PGA pin placement. Let's start with Jordan Spieth, who finished tied for 45th at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Where will he finish at the Genesis, Reed?
Yeah, I got him in between the top 30 and 40. I just don't like Spieth at this spot. Look, he putts well in Plana, right? That was really his Achilles heel last year. And you kind of saw that rear its ugly head towards the weekend here at Pebble Beach, where he just wasn't making his putts, and he towards the end of that round of that tournament just didn't do that well, right? Doesn't have the distance nor the creativity, I think, to do well here. We've been talking about it quite a bit, that you really have to be able to really shape your shots and be creative. Now, there is a lot of correlation between Augusta and Riviera, and obviously Jordan Spieth does really well at Augusta, so I think he makes the cut, but I got him outside the top 30.
Hey, Jeff, where's he going to finish?
You know, just like Ralph Wiggum on Valentine's, you know, when Lisa broke his heart. I'm going to break the heart of Jordan Spieth fans here as well. I'm going to pick him outside the top 22. I think I'll put him down for a T25, but it just comes down to consistency with Spieth. You're seeing flashes of the old Jordan Spieth, but you're not seeing him put it all together. And Riviera is not a course where you can just come with a couple pieces of your game and expect to have a ton of success. The driver really killed him at times at Pebble Beach. And you better have the driver working at Riviera. You're going to be hitting out of the thick Kikuyu rough all week. That is not good for a shorter hitter like Jordan Spieth. So, yeah, he could definitely grind out a made cut, but, T30, T25, that's what I got him for.
All right, Jon Rahm did not compete at Pebble Beach. He tied for 10th last event, the Waste Management Phoenix Open. So, Jeff, where will Rahm wind up this time around?
This should be a good track for Jon Rahm. The problem is it's his first time playing it in competition. And, people might laugh, well, haha, but you look at the past winners of this event, they've all had a lot of experience playing a Riviera before. So I can't really, realistically pencil in Rahm for a win or anything like that. I think he'll play well. I think T9 is fine. I think you could even go a little bit higher, maybe say he sneaks in with a T5, but I'm not gonna put him down for a win. Now he's playing really well. He's got the off the tee kind of game you want to see. But again, Riviera, first time seeing it. I'm not gonna go higher than T9.
Reed, where are you going on this one?
Yeah, I got him for a victory. I think he's the guy that I wanted this tournament. And look, I mean, Jeff made all of the good points about Jon Rahm, right? This being his first start here, and just not necessarily playing a lot on the West Coast. But look, he's one of these guys that hits the ball far. He can get creative. He can also get pretty hot when he doesn't necessarily make a putt, and that kind of scares you. But look, he hasn't lost strokes off the tee since June in 2017. This guy, we know what he can do in terms of ball striking, top 10 of the last 24 rounds in ball striking, top 15. When you look at other requisite key statistics like par 4 scoring, right, par 5, he is the guy. Now, if you look at long form, Ron doesn't necessarily do well because we've seen him around the greens and putting, not necessarily put his full game together. But I think it's right for the picking here. And this guy, especially where he's priced, if we're talking about just DraftKings and not placement on where he's going to finish, I think one of the top guys here, I'd be overweight on Jon Rahm. I just really like his game coming into this week.
Reed chooses Jon Rahm this week.
Oh, man. He's on the train. Let's go.
All right, same.
Where's the fail stamp?
Oh, my God.
Same layoff for Cameron Smith. He tied for 15th at the end of January in Phoenix. What about this time around, Reed?
Yeah, I got him at T25. Look, he's been playing really well, recently. And if you look at what he's able to do, and especially around this course, short game is really going to be a part of your game that you're going to really have to do well at. And this is what he does. Cam Smith is a guy who comes obviously from Australia, who has that experience on this type of course, right? A long course, doesn't hit the ball far, but that doesn't really worry me about Cam Smith. Again, that distance might fail him in a little bit in those long par 4s, long par 5s, but I think he's got the strong approach game over the last 24 to 36 rounds. He's really got a good approach game going. Putting is really well. So I think a top 25 for Cam Smith isn't out of the question.
Jeff, how about yourself? Inside the top 25 or elsewhere?
No, I'll say inside top 25. I got him down, probably T15, T12. I mean, he's playing pretty well. He's kind of like a more informed version of Jordan Spieth right now. He's really creative. The problem with Cam Smith is he can be wild off the tee. And again, like Spieth, that's going to hurt him on a wet course this week if he's hitting out of the wet rough all week. So he's in better form than Spieth. His approaches have been solid like every start this year. And his around the green game is great. But last year on the drier course where he really benefited from the fast greens, he was scrambling like a maniac. It's not going to come into play as much because people are going to be able to hold the greens, but you've got to hit the fairways here. That's what worries me about Cam Smith this week. I think a T15, T20, somewhere around there is probably more realistic.
All right, how about Charley Hoffman? So wasn't his best at Pebble Beach. Where do you see him finishing, Jeff?
Well, Chucky Hoff. Yeah, I mean, this guy's been all over the place. I mean, he played really well in Phoenix a couple weeks ago, T20, but he's missed a bunch of cuts too, so you're not really sure what to expect. When his ball striking is on, this is a really good venue for Charley Hoffman. He's a guy who's played well at Augusta too, so you've got the correlation there between these two sort of classic courses. He came close to winning at Riviera once. I think he's a player you can take a shot on in GPPs this week. 7,100, it's certainly cheap enough. And it's really about the upside. If his ball striking is on, if his off the tee game is going, he's going to be just fine this week. I probably wouldn't trust him in a cash game because of recent form, but I think the upside is coming along with Hoffman. He could flash it this week.
Reed, Hoffman, where does he finish?
Yeah, I got him just inside the top 30, around T28, around that spot. Look, again, Fanshare Sports just tweeted this out, and we make this correlation to Augusta quite a bit, and that's where Charley Hoffman really does well, especially, too, on the West Coast swing. Since 2015, Fanshare Sports tweeted this out, 8 of 8 cuts when you look at Riviera Country Club and Augusta over the last 4 years. So this guy obviously loves these tougher tracks in the West Coast swing where he's gotten a 35th, a 4th, and a 7th right at the Farmers Genesis and Pebble Beach. So he's done well on these type of courses, on these Poana greens. But to Jeff's point, his recent form is garbage, right? I mean, he hasn't necessarily, outside of his top 20s here or there, hasn't really performed, and he hasn't won in quite some time. And so that does scare you. But in terms of cut equity at where he's priced on DraftKings, I think a T20, T25 isn't out of the question.
Hey, Jeff, in case you change your mind, have a great Valentine's Day.
I won't.
Okay.
Grumpy.
Fair enough. Thanks for your help tonight, guys. We'll reunite with the NBA crew right after we talk some baseball, first baseman discussion in the PME experience with Gary and Thorne.
Paul Goldschmidt got an ADP of 20.1 by NFBC right now. He is first baseman 1, if only barely. Yeah. It's a really interesting conversation to have about Paul Goldschmidt versus Freddie Freeman. And that's probably the more interesting conversation. We don't have to talk about, do we think Paul Goldschmidt's going to be good? Because
he's elite. From
June on last season, any worries we had, this guy was a 330 hitter, a 272 ISO. He was fixed. It was all fine. Yeah. But the Freeman Goldschmidt thing is just so interesting to me. And in that same mock, I think it's the 17th overall pick, 5th pick in the second round. I wanted to make sure I got one of those guys. And I think that's going to be one of my big draft philosophies this year with how quickly first base falls off. Those two guys are so good, and you can get them in the middle of the second round. It's just a matter of picking which one you want. Yeah. I went with Goldschmidt. In a way, I was looking at the numbers later. Maybe I should have taken Freeman, but it's ridiculous, man. You go back the last 3 years. Freddie Freeman is slashing 306, 396, 549 with a 243 ISO. Goldie is 295 with a 401 OBP, 528 slugging percentage with a 233 ISO. They're the same guy. Freeman even stole 10 bases last year.
Freeman even stole, he's got some sneaky speed. I love them both, and I think exactly like you. And I think we had this conversation when we were talking about sleepers and Tyler White or Miggy. We were talking about those guys.
There are guys.
But for me, the drop-off is huge. This is the weakest position, I think, in fantasy at first base, and I want one of them as well. And I actually get bummed when I don't get Freeman or Goldie. And for me, I lean Freeman just slightly. But I mean, for Goldschmidt, you know what you're getting, right? You talk about last season is just a really slow start for him. He was one of the best buy low candidates in fantasy baseball, and everyone was talking about the humidor effect, and maybe that had a little bit to do with it. But he's hit at least 30 home runs in 3 of his last 4 years, at least a 290 average in 6 straight seasons. Yes, you mentioned the stolen bases, 32, 18, 7. He's 31 years old now, but I look at the change away from Arizona. What Arizona obviously still a great hitter's ballpark, but 304 is what he hit on the road for his career. That's his average. And then last year, 339. Like, he's a good hitter away from Arizona, so I have no worries about him being in St. Louis. It's a much better ballpark or a better lineup for him. I lean Freeman, but I think for people who are watching or listening, it's very important, I think, to get one of these guys if you can. And then I think you're laughing the rest of the way. Like, there's some deep positions elsewhere. I know I want to get one of those elite shortstops, that top tier, those 6 guys, but I don't think it's the end of the world if you end up with one of these guys at first and you miss out on that. The shortstop position is pretty deep.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, too, just with the way they're falling in terms of their ADP, aside from maybe picking 10th, 11th, and 12th in the first round of a 12-team league, there's really nowhere you can't take them and it not be a value. Like, I don't know. I think there's enough just exceedingly high caliber players who are 5 category guys, maybe a little bit more than Goldschmidt is at this point with the decline in his stolen bases, where to take him before 15th in the draft is probably a bit of a reach, but 16, 17, 18, like, doesn't matter.
Falls right into your lap there,
Thank you, Garion. Talking hoops to close out the program. The Jazz visit the Warriors later tonight. That matchup is the featured showdown contest on DraftKings. One final stop for our NBA panel. DK Live's Julian Edlow. Pierce Dietrich is here as well. And we have RotoWire's Nick Whalen.
All right, guys, Kevin Durant and Steph Curry are the top priced players. Let's assume you have room for just one of these stars in your lineup. So who are you taking, Julian?
Yeah, this is so close on this slate. In 2 games against Utah this year, Durant is averaging 52 DK points. Curry is averaging 50 DK points. Utah ranks 5th in DK points allowed to the point guard position and 10th in DK points allowed to the small forward position. I mean, Durant's been playing a little bit better lately and has a slightly better matchup and averages slightly more DK points against Utah. So if you have the room for Durant, I would say take Durant. But if it makes your lineup fit into place better to spend $400 less to go with Curry, I think that's fine. There's not much of a difference here.
Pierce, where are you going? You can only have one.
I'm glad you didn't start with me. This is a tough question. I've kind of struggled over it, looking through the stats, and the stats pretty much mirror each other. The usage for each guy is kind of low. It's never really high. Durant had a couple games where he shot under 13 shots, but Steph Curry doesn't have a huge usage bump. You can look back at both Utah games, and they both had decent games. I really honestly don't know what to tell you. If you can build a better lineup without them by not paying for these high-priced guys, then maybe consider it.
Nick, where are you going?
I feel the same way. It's like you're asking me to choose between JJ Redick and Klay Thompson, and it's a horse piece. I think I have to lean toward KD. I mean, like these guys just said, I'm kind of poring over the numbers looking for some sort of advantage. He did just put up 53 DraftKings points despite going 1 of 7 from 3. Durant's kind of been mired in like a mini slump from beyond the arc, so maybe you could make a case that tonight's the night that he breaks out of it. He has gotten to the line 20 times over the last 2 games, so even with that 3-point shooting lagging behind a little bit, he's still insulating his value at the free throw line. So I guess I'll go with Kevin Durant tonight, but you really can't go wrong with either.
All right, I guess the hard question is out of the way. Let's see if we can get a more firm take on Donovan Mitchell, who has been very up and down as of late, just 37 DK points per game over the last 10 days. Mitchell due for a big game tonight, Pierce?
These are all hard questions because they both play really good defense. This is another tough one because Donovan Mitchell is not shooting the greatest this year, and he never really. I mean, he's not even a top 20 shooter. And if you're going to beat Golden State, you really have to bury shots. Oh, by the way, they're a great defense. I don't like the Donovan Mitchell play, but we're only digging into one game. I think you might be forced to play it.
That's right. You took the under from earlier in the show. How about you, Nick?
Right, it's tough. I mean, if you're not going with Donovan Mitchell, I don't know what direction you're really looking in for Utah outside of Rudy Gobert. I mean, I think this Golden State defense, though, is just too tough. It's easy to look at the points that they're putting up, the offensive rating that Golden State is putting up, and kind of assume that maybe they're relaxing on the other end, and that's not really the case. I think they're 6th in defensive rating over their last 10, and really kind of continue to be stellar in that area, even as they reintegrate DeMarcus Cousins. So. I think this is a game where Donovan Mitchell, as he has for much of the year, probably likes to take matters into his own hands. But, I don't really see him going off against this Warriors defense. I mean, maybe you play him and he has one of those nights where he gets over 30 points, but he might do it on 9 of 25 shooting or something like that.
Yeah, one of you guys was saying that earlier. It's a playoff field type of game. Julian, do you think Donovan Mitchell rises to the occasion?
Yeah, I would actually lay off Mitchell here. I do think Rudy Gobert for $200 less is a much better play against Golden State, so that's where I would go with Utah. He's averaging 43 DK points in the 2 games against them. You've got Boogie Cousins just below him. You've got Klay Thompson at $8,000 right below him, who's a pretty good play. And sticking with the Utah side, since it feels like outside of Gobert we don't like that many guys, Joe Ingles at $6,400. He's stepped up against Golden State this year. He averages over 40 DraftKings points in the 2 games against them, playing over 35 minutes per game in those 2 games. So he's done it by shooting 11 of 20 from 3. I don't necessarily know if that's sustainable, but he's been playing pretty well in these big spots.
Well, it feels like not getting selected to the All-Star game really pissed off Utah big man Rudy Gobert. He's logged a double-double in 4 straight games. So Gobert, a good play at 9,600, Nick?
I think he is. Yeah, I mean, as we just said, if you're going to pivot away from Donovan Mitchell, I think you have to look toward Gobert. And, personally, I think he certainly deserves to be in Charlotte. And, of course, he has the added motivation of going up against Draymond Green, who, of course, felt it necessary to comment on Gobert's reaction to not being selected. Usually I usually don't like to factor things like that in. But, this does seem like there's a little bit of smoke there. And Gobert is certainly a player who is not shy to play emotionally. So it's never really a good matchup when you see the Warriors on the schedule, but they can be exploited on the glass. When Boogie Cousins is off the floor, he's still only playing about half the game. I think Gobert can do some work there and hopefully continue that streak of now 14 games with multiple blocks.
Julian, Gobert and a little trip down Narrative Street here?
Yeah, this is actually Narrative Street in an NBA game, not Narrative Street of a 4th grade basketball league where somebody cries when they don't make the All-Star team and somebody's making fun of them, even though it sounds like that. Look, Draymond Green is questionable. If Draymond Green plays, he's probably going to have to guard Gobert some maybe when Draymond's not on the floor, because as we just said, he's still only playing around 24 minutes or whatever. They do have the guys, Kevon Looney. They probably have some guys that are better matchups, but if Draymond does wind up playing in this game and is matched up with Gobert at all, I'll buy into that, and Gobert should be the guy that definitely wins that matchup. But from a Utah perspective, just looking at the numbers and forgetting all that, he still is the best play just from a numbers perspective from the Utah side here. So I do think he's in a good spot.
Pierce, I know you love Narrative Street.
Yeah, we argue a lot about whether narratives really exist. This one has got to be true. If I'm going to believe any narrative, if a guy makes fun of you for crying and then questions you and says that people are no longer going to respect you, that's more than a burn. That's a real legitimate insult. And I don't think Gobert is going to care if Draymond's on the court or not. He has got to have a chip on his shoulder. If he doesn't, then Draymond's right. Then he loses respect. If he doesn't go out there and have a huge night, then he's going to lose a ton of respect across the league. He has to go nuts.
All right, less than 3 minutes to go, so let's try and be a little quick. So far, so good for the DeMarcus Cousins experiment. His 11th game of the season is tonight. He holds his highest showdown price of the year, $8,800 as a flex. Like or dislike Cousins in this spot? Julian?
Yeah, I think you can get away with him. It's just if you're going to play Rudy Gobert and one of the Curry Durant plays, it's probably going to be pretty hard to fit him.
Pierce?
Yeah, I love him. Draymond might punk out, so that means more usage for Boogie.
Okay, and Nick?
If it's between him and Gobert, I'm still going Gobert, but I'm certainly not going to tell you not to play Boogie Cousins. Been very effective in limited minutes.
Oh, I would love to see those two guys go at it tonight. That would be fun.
All right, Pierce, help the people find value in this showdown. Who's a cheap play that you like tonight?
I like Kevon Looney. If we don't get Iguodala and we don't have Draymond Green, Looney probably will get over 20 minutes. And when he gets 20, 25 minutes, he hits value. He's hit value of 7X a lot of times this year. It's kind of sneaky.
Nick, we need value.
Well, I can interest you in a Jonas Jerebko revenge game if anybody wants that. But on the Utah side of things, Royce O'Neal, he's at 4,500 in showdown, played at least 24 minutes each of the last 3 games. He's been up over 22 DraftKings points in each of those games, so you really can't ask for much more at that price.
Under a minute, Julian.
Yeah, I think you could maybe go with Sean Livingston, considering that he's $1,000 to slot into your flex. So he's basically like a punt play that can get you 10 points.
All right, we need 2 more things, and you guys can get out of here. We need slate approved picked for this contest, and then for the entire 5-game slate. We'll go to Nick first.
Man, I only have one prepared for this contest, but I think it can apply for both. I'm going with Klay Thompson. Utah defends the shooting guard spot well. I think they're the best in the league at that. But this is Klay Thompson. I'm not too worried about that ranking. He's been hot lately, taking a ton of shots these last 4 games. He's got 18 made threes in that span. There's going to be times that Kyle Korver is guarding him in that game. We've seen how that's played out over the years. I'll take Klay in this showdown at 12K, and I like him on the overall slate as well.
All right, well, it's locked, or we're not locked yet. Just get theirs really quick. Pierce and Julian, 30 minutes, really quick.
Well, I won't take the whole 30 minutes up until 7:30. Although, no, I'll take Rudy Gobert on the showdown slate as my pick.
Pierce.
And then for the major,
Go LeBron.
Okay, that was
yeah. Sorry, we got to cut you off, Jules. We love you though. That's gonna do it for the sweat. We'll see you tomorrow at 6.
Bye, Jessie.